I knew she was coming. I just texted her to remind her.
Oh,
but
good. Good morning, folks. Thank you all for joining. We wanted to wait a few more minutes because we wanted to see if some late arrivals would be coming. So we do have a couple here. Morning, Carol. Morning, Carlton, Dennis, and Lauren. Glad you guys could participate on this beautiful Saturday morning. So I'm going to dive right in. And so we'll put all of your mics on mute throughout the presentation, and then we'll have an opportunity at the end to have some dialogue with you. So greetings from the Charter Review Committee to everyone who've joined. This is our final of 3 sessions that we had scheduled this week. We had one Tuesday morning and Thursday night. And the purpose really is to share our recommendations with you, to answer any questions that you might have, and then get any final input from you that will help us complete our work over the next month. We're doing our final tweaking of the recommendations, so we really value your feedback to help us complete this effort. So we'll start with a presentation that'll go probably 30 to 40 minutes, and then we'll open it up for some dialogue at the end. During the presentation, as I just mentioned, all the mics will be turned off. For anyone wishing to speak, you'll have an opportunity to do so at the end during our Q&A session. I would recommend you having a pencil and paper nearby just to take notes, because we will be going into some detail. And if something, strikes you as something you might want to comment on, you don't want to forget about it. So taking notes would be a good thing. So,
also, please refrain from the chat feature.
Yeah, no chatting. And I didn't even introduce myself. And like Waldy, chair of the Charter Review Committee. It looks like we have 2 other members here on, Tom Golden and Janet Hansen, who have joined as well. So again, thank you for your time. And I'm going to share my screen and get right into the presentation here. Hopefully you can all see that. Okay, so starting out with an agenda. In terms of background, we were formed, well, actually, let me go back here a second. The agenda is pretty simple. We're going to share a little bit about where we've been over the last year, remind you of how we've approached our work, and then dive into some recommendations. To set the stage, I do want to tell you up front that our presentation does not include every single recommendation that we're making. It would be impossible to do that in a presentation, in less than an hour. So what we've done is we've highlighted some of our key recommendations that we're going to present to you today. We also have the updated charter that is out on the website that has all of our recommendations in it, highlighted in green. So you should be able to look at that and get more detail if you'd like. To wrap up, we'll talk briefly about options that we think are good for rolling this out in the next year. And as I said before, we'll then move to a time of listening from you at the end. So in terms of background, we were formed about a year ago, last May. The committee has pretty much stayed the same throughout the year, although we did have one resignation early on, but that was quickly filled by the town council. So the 7 members that you see listed on this slide have really been the key people that have been devoted and committed to working on this over the last year. We met twice a month, in some cases 3 times a month on the first and third Wednesday of each month, and obviously a couple of months had 5, so we did meet extra on those months. We met a total of 28 times throughout the year. They were all Zoom calls because of COVID. The first 3 months focused on really getting ourselves organized, setting expectations, gathering and reviewing prior charter review data, planning and establishing a schedule to help guide us through our efforts. From September through November, the committee focused on developing and distributing a citizen survey and an employee questionnaire. We also conducted 3 public forums last fall to solicit additional feedback from the community. The final phase, which began in December of last year, was really when we began to get into conducting an in-depth review of the charter line by line, discussing and voting on potential recommendations. as well as reconciling and including any feedback that we had received from citizens and employees through the survey and questionnaire. In terms of scoping our efforts and trying not to reinvent the wheel, we made a decision early on that we would not start with a blank sheet of paper, but rather would try and utilize the prior work of the 2014 Charter Review Committee, as well as the 2017 Town Council Rules and Procedures Committee. This gave us a good baseline from which to start from and saved us, additional time and effort. We also realized that much of the original 2010 charter, which is what we're currently under now, has really served us well over the past decade. So we wanted to try and ensure that we kept what was working well, but focused on those areas of government that could use some improvement. As already mentioned, getting input from the community and employees was very key in helping us identify potential areas of improvement. Our online citizen survey, I just wanted to give you a snapshot here of what we accomplished. It consisted of 13 questions, was based on previous recommendations, as I said, made from the Charter Review Committee before in the Rules and Procedure Committee, as well as including important issues in town. The survey was open for 37 days and we received 114 responses. The data was collected and analyzed and summarized for use in our discussions. Our goal was to try and address all the feedback that we could that related specifically to the charter. So as you can see from this summary slide of key findings, we did get obviously some stuff that was charter related, but we also got a lot of stuff that was really beyond the charter. And we, although we didn't specifically address that in the charter, it has value to our town. So that information will be passed along to the council and the town manager for consideration in other areas, whether it be future ordinances or decisions the town manager might want to make to act on some of those things. So now we'll begin to look at some of the recommendations, and we've broken them into sort of two categories, one being just general recommendations that apply throughout the charter, and then article specific. So I'm going to review on this slide some of the general recommendations that we have, and then I'm going to turn it over to Tom, and he's going to walk through each of the 10 articles and review some of the highlighted recommendations we have there. So in terms of the general recommendations, one of the first things we did was begin to look at the definitions. There is a section in the current charter under Article 1 that lists all the definitions. So we added some new definitions that you can see on this slide, and we also clarified some ambiguities and improved the readability of the existing recommendations, the definitions that were there. So appointing authority was something we added. City official, MGL, which is Mass General Law, and then recall. Another thing we did, and we had a lot of discussion about this, was we wanted to avoid word choices in the charter which may be interpreted as being biased, discriminatory, or demeaning. So we went through the whole charter and we revised it and updated it to include gender neutral language. And we thought this was good in keeping up with the times and just making the charter reflect that. Another thing we did here was we really felt that it was time to bring the charter up to date with its stated form of government. The very first paragraph of the charter, section 1.1, reads as follows: the city of Bridgewater shall constitutionally have a city form of government. So structurally, we are actually a city based on our form of government. But yet the charter, other than just in that first section, refers to the town of Bridgewater, the town manager, the town council. So we felt it was a good time to basically make all those references of town to city to be to be consistent. Now, what that doesn't mean is that the town has to necessarily now refer to itself externally as a city. We can certainly keep the town signage if we want to do that. We can still have the appearance of being a town, but we just felt it was important to make the charter consistent with its defined, type of government that we have. The next thing we did was there was a lot of different references in the charter to Mass General Law, but they were all, there was no consistency in the reference, how it was being referenced. So we went to the state, got the kind of the official version of how that should be formatted, and we went through the charter and made sure that was consistent throughout. We also felt it was important that as people read the charter and there are references to supporting documentation and reference material, we wanted to make it easy for people to get access to that so they didn't have to go chasing, and so we wanted to put hyperlinks in the charter so people could click on those and it would bring them right to that information. And then last but not least, obviously there were, grammatical things that we needed to correct. And we did a lot of error correction to improve overall readability. In some cases, we actually restructured paragraphs to make them simpler to read as well. So that was some of the highlights on the general recommendations. And what I'm going to do now is turn it over to Tom, who will begin to walk through each of the articles. Tom?
Yep. So thanks, Ed. So I will say, if I do tend to speak fast, so if there's anybody on the call that I'm going too fast for, please just raise your hand, or Ed, just tell me to shut up, and I will try to slow down as appropriate. So starting with Article 1, there was the only big change in Article 1 was that we moved the definitions from the Article 1 to the beginning of the charter to stress their importance. Ed, you can go to the next one.
Yep.
So Article 2, starting with 2-1B, we adjusted the language there to clarify how vacancies were filled. 2-1C, we minimized the lame duck period and changed from the beginning of the second Monday, changes from the beginning on the second Monday following the election. Section 2, Article 2-1D, we edited this for clarity, and we added the prohibition for state ethics laws violations. 2-1E, the maximum service of 8 elections for a total of 24 years. One of the more contentious discussions within the committee, honestly, during our meetings. If anybody's interested in that, please go back on YouTube and watch it. And the other comment there is that committee opinions range from 4 terms to no term limits at all, depending on district councilor or councilor at large.
So Tom, can I add something to this? Because I think it's important on this one. So the way the charter is written today, it says 12 consecutive years. And, we discussed that, and we talked about ways to sort of, eliminate any loopholes that might be in the charter going forward. So we made a decision to actually take the time factor out of the term limit discussion. So what we did was we changed it to number of times being elected. So right now, the way it's in our recommendation, the way it's worded is a councilor term cannot exceed 4 elections. But we also know that, there are people who have concerns with term limits. So we wanted to expand it a little bit. So essentially what it means now is that any councilor in their current position, once they hit their 4 election term, could then get back on a ballot for another councilor position. So what I mean by that is a district councilor, after they finish their term, could then run for an at-large position and serve another 4 elections. So essentially, they could serve 8 terms or 24 years if that turned up. So we expanded that. There is still a limit, but we thought we opened it up to address and to really have a compromise there for the people that didn't agree with it. So thanks, Tom.
Yep, and I would also add that it's not just the 7 of us that opined on this issue. We also spent a lot of time looking at the citizen survey results for that particular question because it is a contentious town issue. Okay, so we can go to the next slide. Yep, great. So 2-3C5, we felt it was important to set a specific date for the yearly state of the town message. Article 2-6C improves accessibility to citizens. We're really looking here to improve communication between council members and citizens and provides an additional level of accountability for those that are serving to their constituents and make them more accessible. Article 2-7A, we retained the original charter language to provide citizens or other aggrieved parties the opportunity to object to prior to enacting a measure and give it some additional time there, moving it from the 72 hours to the 30 days. Great. And wrapping up Article 2, Article 2-9, The newspaper legal notices postings are not the most effective way and are extremely expensive. So we replaced this and updated it a little bit to require also posting on the town website, posting requirements, meeting the posting requirements of state law, and any other posting requirements decided by the council. But keeping in mind that newspapers are still valuable, but there are other venues and other forms of media that we can use to, or the town can use to reach out to its citizens. Article 2-12A. The comment here is that the council has demonstrated the ability to restore and continuously improve the financial picture. It's difficult to attract and retain council members, so the compensation there should help with that a little bit. And this stipend is still below benefits available to similar elected officials in similar communities, and it ranges from $3,000 to $5,000. We looked at various municipalities throughout the Commonwealth that are under similar structures to see if and what they were providing as a stipend to counselors, and that's how we ended up with that $3,000 figure. Let's move on to Article 3. So Article 3, Section 1, we attempted to make more open and enhanced engagement without violating conflict of interest laws and standards. This will enable employees eligible for non-council elected or appointed positions with annual council and attorney approval to become more engaged in the town. Article 3, Section 2, conversations and recommendations received directly from the Library Board of Trustees puts power back in the hands of the elected trustees, as was the original intent. We spent, I think, a meeting and a half talking about that, so there was some good dialogue there and some significant changes. Article 3-3, we increased the number of voters required to fill an at-large councillor recall, and we solidified what it would take to begin the process of a recall. In short, we increased requirements from in a numerical sense to better represent the town's population. This again is something that we looked at other municipalities to make sure that we were following the footsteps of other other government forms that have worked this way. Article 3, Section 4, the city clerk had spoken to our group about the value of an elected versus an appointed position. Additionally, feedback from the citizen survey indicated the elected route was the way to go almost overwhelmingly. To Article 4. So Article 4, Section 1, it clarifies the power of the city council to direct the city manager. This reflects feedback from the citizen survey and the employee questionnaire that provides better checks and balances which are needed between the city council and the city manager. We did add an appointment term consistent with other city appointed positions. Article 4, Section 2-19, this change better establishes a connection across the board in planning to maximize success for the town. Article 4, Section 2.25, this makes it easier for citizens' voices to be heard beyond the 3-minute time at the beginning of council meetings. Again, one of the things that was harped on from both citizen comment during our meetings and in the citizen survey is providing better measures for citizens to be able to engage town councilors. We also had some good dialogue about whether this belongs in the charter or in the administrative code. After all those discussions, we feel that putting it in the charter really adds some teeth and value to it. Article 4, Section 2.26, this establishes a firm timeline for minimum communication between the councilors and constituents. And the last part of Section 4-7, these changes are relatively self-explanatory related to temporary absences of the town manager. I'll leave it there for a second because I don't want to go too fast. And take a breath, honestly. All right, move to Article 5. So Article 5, Section 3A, this change is being recommended because the city attorney represents the city as a whole and is a representative of the citizens. The council majority gives direction on behalf of the city. Furthermore, this recommendation aligns with other city appointed positions and comes with a limited term and with the limited option of a reappointment. Move to Article 6. Starting with Article 6, Section 3C. This paragraph is contained in the current charter, the 2010 version. The 2014 Charter Review Committee updated it, but it was removed by the then 2017 Town Council Rules and Procedures Committee. We do believe it is important to have a mid-year review of the budget to ensure transparency on actual budget versus budgeted expenses. Article 6-6B3, we added a statement to list the currently approved projects and their status. The idea is to separate what is currently approved projects from new projects and their given status. Article 6, 8.1 through 8.2. This restored the content of the original charter, which gives the council responsibility for selecting an independent auditor. This change was to make the annual independent audit truly independent audit. We felt that by limiting the scope of their audit, it was limiting in nature. To that point, the direction was given to the auditor needs to come from the city council and not by the city manager. Move to Article 7, where there was no significant changes outside of the general ones Ed has previously discussed. Let's move to Article 8. By indicating the number of days to provide clarity on the timeline and the described expectations under Section 8-1B, we increased the petition time from 10 to 31 days, to give citizens more time to initiate a protest on a particular measure. And our final comment on Article 8 is that we added an email distribution to reflect the conventional types of communication available to our citizens.
Tom, I thought I heard you say 31 days, but it's actually 30 days.
Yeah, 10 to 30, sorry.
Yeah, okay.
Yep, sorry. Article 9, so Article 9-1A, this makes it easier to read and clearer to understand related to the conflicts of interest. 9-6D, we added this so there's no confusion from when counting days begins. And Article 9-Section 7, we eliminated confusion by breaking the removal process into two separate processes based on who the approval authority is, either the city council or the city manager. And then Section 9-9, these changes related to the enforcement of the charter provisions are relatively self-explanatory. I'd implore you all to pay a little bit of attention to the bold font.
Yeah, so this was an added section that we felt it was important to put in based on the feedback that we had been given. You know, the question is when somebody violates the charter or when there's a question about a violation, who's responsible for dealing with that? So this helps identify some responsibility, puts the main responsibility on the council president to make sure that any allegations are researched and dealt with accordingly.
All right, Article 10. Since we're not recommending to make the town clerk and appointed the verbiage of the sorry, my notes here are pretty rough. Since we're not recommending to make the town clerk appointed, the verbiage of except as provided in this section was no longer needed. And I think that is all my comments on the article specific things.
Okay, thank you, Tom.
Turn it back to Ed.
Yep. So this takes us to the following question. How can we ensure a successful rollout of these recommendations? There are really two aspects to answering the question. First is really how it's packaged and delivered to the citizens. And the second is timing. As we all know, the previous process after leaving the Charter Review Committee in 2015, took approximately 4 years before it got to the voters in 2019. And then once it got to the voters, it was packaged as all or nothing, and it ultimately failed at the ballot box. So we don't want to have a repeat of that scenario. So what we'll be suggesting to the council is an alternative approach that will include having a series of questions on the ballot that will give voters more choices without sacrificing the whole charter review. So one option that we see right now is to bundle all of the sort of non-controversial or general recommendations into one question. So an example would be to include all the grammatical updates, the gender neutral language, the town to city references, the MGL consistency, and the library trustee updates. It could be more or whatever the council would decide to package in that one question. And then that would be voted on singly. Then the more controversial items could be presented as single questions. So we've listed 4 of those down here, and we could give the citizens the option to vote on each of those separately. Using this approach will increase the likelihood of at least some of the recommendations passing. And also it just helps the citizens understand more about what's being presented. Now there's a balance here because we're not limited as to how many questions could actually go on the ballot, but the more you have, the more confusion, it could create. So the council is going to have to decide what is a good number. Is it 4, is it 5, is it 6 questions, whatever the number might be, and it have to be adequate education around those so that people won't be confused. In terms of what happens next, we're holding these forums, obviously, to gather final input so that we can go back and make our final decisions over the next month. Hopefully by the end of this month, we'll be done. And then the next step would be to make a presentation to the council sometime in June. I know they have a meeting on the 1st, and I think they have a meeting on the 29th. So I've I reached out to the new council president asking him for getting on the agenda in June to make that presentation. The council will then do what they need to do with it. They will probably give it to their Rules and Procedures Committee, similarly to what they did last time. And then they will review our recommendations and decide, what makes sense to them, keep or to eliminate. They will also engage the town attorney for a review to make sure that everything passes legal muster. And then once they're done with it, it goes to the state legislature for their review before coming back to the town for placement on the ballot. Realistically, could it happen for next year? It could if the council wanted to do it that quickly. But probably it might end up going maybe 2 years. So it might be, April of 2023 possibly was when this would actually be presented. Okay, so now we come to a time for some questions, feedback. I'm going to stop sharing here. And hopefully we didn't go too quickly. We may have, but we would be very interested in hearing or taking any questions you might have or any feedback that you want to give us. So
Ed, can I add one thing?
Yep.
On the previous slide, for anyone that's unclear on what the second voting is, the committee is going to literally go through every vote we've taken over the last year and either vote to affirm that vote or vote to change it, just so everyone's clear on what that meant.
Yeah, sorry, I missed that one. Thanks for the clarification. All right, so what we'll do is if you have a question, raise your hand and we'll call on you and then we'll go from there. Hey, Dennis, go ahead. You're on mute.
Yeah.
There we go.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you, Tom, for that presentation, and thank the committee for the work that you've been doing this past year. I have a couple of questions, and when you started to look at the word city versus town in the language of the charter, and you looked at other forms, as you know, we're a city known as the town of Bridgewater. It's similar language as the town of Braintree has, actually. Did you ever think that maybe it's getting close to, maybe we need a mayor, or was that never really something that was brought up when you talk about city? I don't know. The only city in Massachusetts that has a manager and not a mayor, the closest would be Worcester, who has a mayor, but the city manager runs the town. The mayor is more ceremonial due to highest vote turnout. I think that's how they have it. But the mayor's not a full-time position in Worcester. So I didn't know if mayor got close to your discussions when you were putting in the word city throughout the charter.
Yeah, that's a good question. To be honest, we didn't discuss that at all. There was some brief discussion about, should we in fact change the form of government back to the old the old form because we had some people that were suggesting that. So we talked a little bit about that, but we never talked about adding a mayor. Now, obviously, with the council form of government, you can have a mayor or you do not need a mayor. So
Right.
we would have to, and as you said, it's more of a visible figure. You still have a city manager who actually conducts the day-to-day business, but it's more of a ceremony position. We can certainly look at that if the committee feels it's important to look at, but no, we did not discuss it.
All right, that was just an observation. On the term limits, I'm glad that you've defined that a little bit clearer. During your discussions regarding term limits, right now there's some language in there that says until a successor is qualified. So if somebody comes up to the end of their 4 elections and nobody runs in that district or at-large seat, that current person stays there until a successor would be qualified if nobody runs, unless there's a handful of write-ins, or maybe that same person gets a write-in, but that would be qualified as elected, I guess. So that would be the scenario then. If somebody is up and they can't run again, but nobody runs, they sit until somebody is qualified.
Well, I believe that the way it's worded is the council appoints somebody on an interim basis to fill that position. Now,
If someone comes forward.
They may appoint the same person, or they could point something differently. I mean, you have this situation really with any elected position. This is not unique to the council. And if you have an elected position where nobody pulls papers and you have no write-ins,
Yeah.
so I think the language that's in there right now gets us. It's covering the appointment process that we've actually used this past year, right? With Peter. So
We never appointed anybody though. He just sat there until we tried to appoint someone, but no one put their name in, and then we never appointed him.
Oh, I thought you did.
No.
Huh.
Anyway.
Okay.
So the compensation, that's fine. City, my question I'm glad the town clerk is staying elected. I think that's very, very important. Well, the city clerk, I should say, the city clerk. But my question is, if it's in the charter right now that it's elected, and your recommendation is that it stay elected, why even make it a ballot question? Why even? And the survey was overwhelming, make it stay elected. I don't think it's really a hot button issue. It may be a hot button issue for a few people, but I just think that there's really no need to make it a ballot question. Now, if you don't put it on as a ballot question, it could come out of rules and procedures as a ballot question, or the council could make it a ballot question. But my argument would be, and I voted against it to be on the ballot as a change last time. So my point is, it's in the charter as elected. Survey overwhelmingly said it should be elected. Your recommendation is to stay elected. I don't think you need to put it forward as a ballot question. That's just my view. Kind of, if it comes out of, it could change in rules and procedures, or it could be a recommendation, but
right.
That's just
okay.
On the city manager and the town attorney, I'm sure the answer is no, but when you say maximum 5-year renewable term, you're not term limiting them, are you? They could get a renewal of a 5-year contract, right? You're not limiting them to term. Okay.
Right. It is a renewable 5-year term. What we're doing is we're just saying that we know that they each have contracts. So, that's a separate situation, but we're saying that at least on a 5-year period, you have to review their tenure, and that might give the council an opportunity to say, maybe it's time we look for somebody else, or maybe they're doing a great job, we want to keep them. But at least on a 5-year basis, the charter is going to say you must relook at the position.
Okay, those are all the questions I have. Thank you again.
Thank you, Dennis. Appreciate it. Carlton.
Thank you guys for the hard work. I'm appreciated having gone through it once myself. Very good to all of you guys in the town for participating. I'm going to make a couple of suggestions. I've got several here. When we talk about the city of Bridgewater, I don't have a problem defining that. What I have a problem is the extensive and unnecessary repetition of city in the charter as it is now. It just irritates me. So I think it should be defined as the city of Bridgewater, known as Bridgewater. That way you can get rid of all the references in the charter to the city of Bridgewater. That will
So-
clean it up a bit.
Yeah, so Carlton, just to let you know, there's only 7 references to the actual city of Bridgewater in the charter. The problem is that every other time we use the word town, we've replaced it with city. So that's why you see so many times you see the word city manager, city council, and it stands out in green when you look at the charter. Everywhere you look, you see the word city. I understand what you're saying.
That's why I'm reacting, but I think
Yep.
it's just irritating as a reader. But anyway, the other thing you need to fix is that any city in Massachusetts does not have a city attorney. They have a city solicitor.
Okay.
That's under Mass General Law, I believe. The town manager, I didn't understand the language 5-year renewable. I think the town manager needs to be, as it is now, every 3 years, because I think 5 years is too long, quite frankly, to review the town. And I think a formal, they are trying to implement a formal um, goals for the town manager at an annual basis. I don't know what you mean by a formal review, because that should be done. If it's 3-year term, formal review within 6 months of contract ending, I think that would be helpful. But I also think the town manager should be term limited.
Okay.
And I
Thank
think
you.
it would be 3-4-year terms. You somewhere in there you said about something about land development in the charter, and I don't believe it needs to be in the charter. Land development is the responsibility of the executive office, but also it's directed by the master plan that is owned by the planning board. And the master plan and zoning are legally and by Mass General Law a planning board element.
Carlton, can I interrupt for 1 second? Just for you, can you state your name and your address? We forgot to ask you to do that at the beginning.
I'm Carlton Hunt, 80 Austin Street. Thank you, sir.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Janet.
I think everybody knows who I am, but I realize not everybody knows this old face. I think you want to make, I'm glad you used the term district, because I believe it may be, you look into this, what we have, the 7 precincts we have now will be changing, and it's under state law, as I understand it. I think, well, I'm not sure that. What I think it is, they should be a ward, and each ward can have more than one district or precinct. Right now, if the census changes us, I know that the town clerk has been working and discussing, we would retain the 7 districts, wards, whatever the right term is, okay? But we might have more than one precinct in each district, because precincts are limited to about 4,000 people by state law, and maybe national law, I'm not sure. So you need to clarify that, and you may want to have a conversation with the town clerk as to exactly what she's understanding. She would be on here, but the day is too beautiful, as you said. I think I'm not sure what I wrote here. There's something about citing at least one term, but oh, I know. I think if you're going to allow counselors to run again, I think they should sit out at least one term.
Okay.
Particularly if they're not going to run from a district to an at-large or an at-large to a district, I still think they need to sit out 1 year, because that gives other people a chance, et cetera.
You said 1 year or 1 term?
1 term.
So that
One
would be
term.
that would be 3 years, yeah.
It's up to you guys, but I think they have to at least sit out for a bit just to
Take a break, yeah.
take a break. Yeah.
Okay, good.
I don't agree with the change from 72 hours to 30 days for things to take effect. We talked about that back in 2014 extensively, and we determined at that point to change 30 days after a vote to 72 because it was affecting the ability to have certain things happen. So I don't agree with that changing to 30 days. If you want to change it to a week, that's fine. But I don't believe we should lengthen that back again.
Okay.
I think the recall provision is non-controversial. The current charter has no recall, and as we know, it caused issues. And I think that's just one of the things that has to be in there. You can debate the language, but the fact that it's there is non-controversial for me. The other thing last thing I would say is I think that your recommendation should include that the town council, pardon me, the town council expedite the review and the submission of a revised charter to the citizens. I think expedite means to be within a year. We've gone too long with this set of issues, and we've had numerous things come up about it. So
you're actually saying include something in the charter that puts a time frame around the review?
No, in your submission letter, your report.
Okay.
I just think you can't do that, but I think you can't define that they have to act, but you could. But I just think it's more important for them to know that you guys don't want to see another 3-year effort going on. And I agree with that. It needs to happen sooner rather than later. The last thing that I'll mention, and you may or may not be aware of this, as you know, the current town council clerk has resigned that position effective in 2 weeks. Many of the, and you can look at this again, many of the cities that have the cities with this form of government put the town council's clerk within the office of the city clerk. So the town council clerk is housed within the city clerk's office. I'll be really blunt. Right now, the housing of the councils in the executive office location, I think presents some conflicts in terms of the council job versus the town manager's effort. So I think it needs to be in a separate location. You, again, talk to the city clerk as to whether or not my idea is even acceptable. But I think it should be housed in a separate location. That would be a recommendation that I would make also. I know there's not a lot of room left in the town town academy building. Again, thank you guys very much for this massive effort. I think you've done a great job, and we'll see what happens. Go well.
Well, thank you, Carlton. And I also just want to thank you for what you've helped us with over the past year. I mean, you've been involved in many of our meetings. You provided us with, the input that you guys had come up with back in 2015. So it provided a lot of value to us. So thank you very much. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ed, can I add one more thing?
Yeah.
Carlton, related to the land development thing, we're not adding it to the charter anywhere. That was one of the open responses that was overwhelming in the citizen survey. So in that chart, Ed just captured that as like other town issue, but not charter impacting.
Yeah.
So what is the purpose?
Just, we didn't want that information to get lost, so we included it in the presentation that the town council will get, so they see that it existed, and make sure that the citizens know that we looked at everything, even if it wasn't charter impacting, and tried to quantify it for them.
Well, I suggest in the future presentation you qualify that the master plan guides that. The town council can input to the master plan, but they don't have the authority to approve it. So I would suggest that you clarify that in the future.
Okay. Thank you. Lauren, did I see your hand up?
Yes, thank you. My name is Lauren Webb and I live at 169 Union Street. And so first, thanks for all your hard work. I just have a couple clarifications. I agree with Carlton. I do think a 5-year renewable term for the city manager and city attorney feels a little long. But I guess my question though was, does the charter stipulate that those 5-year terms are staggered? Because if we were in a situation where we wanted a new city manager and city attorney to sort of lose their sort of institutional knowledge at the same time could be problematic. So, you know, is there any staggering on that specified in the charter?
Yeah, the answer to that is no, they're not staggered, but that's a great point. So you are favoring a 3-year renewable term that's staggered. Is that what you're saying?
I would say staggered is the more important one, but maybe a 4-year term. I don't know, because a 5, then, you know, if it's 6 months after that, you know, then it's sort of, you know, creating this longer time period. But I would say the more important issue for me is the staggered one. And then my husband was talking to me when you were talking about the term limits for the city council members. And so I just wanted clarification on that. So it's 4 elections. Is that lifetime, or is it 4 and then they have to sit off, like take it? So could you just go over that one more time?
Right. So the way what we're suggesting is that a district councilor, we have 7 district councilors and we have 2 at-large councilors. So they can be elected 4 times to their current position. Right now, there's nothing that we're recommending that says they need to take time off, but I think Carlton's comment was very valid and we'll relook at that. But if I'm a district councilor and I hit my 4 elections now, and I've served my term, now what I can choose to do, what we're suggesting is I can choose to run for an at-large position. And if I do that, then I'm going to be given another 4 opportunities to run for that position. So I could potentially serve 8 terms for a total of 24 years.
Okay.
What
Yeah,
are
I think.
What are your feelings on that?
I think that makes sense. I do like the idea of sort of coming off for a term.
Okay.
So I will add that we had some intense discussion about this, and the reason we allowed them to be adjacent, the district and the at large, is if the district councilor is so loved by his or her constituents that they would then win an at-large position, they're probably doing a pretty good job. Might be someone we want to keep around. But I agree with both you and Carlton. Like, I'm personally a proponent of the gap, but I just want to let everyone in the group know that that was part of the discussion, is why we would allow for such a extensive period of consecutive serving.
And then just one follow-up question. So if someone serves 4 terms for a district and then 4 terms in the at-large, can they then go 4 terms back to, okay. I mean, they'd have to have a really long life to.
Yeah. Well, you know, and I wouldn't put it past one of them to try and figure out a way to do that, right?
As the oldest person here, I'm not going to take exception.
Thank you, Lauren. Anything else?
No, that's it. Thank you.
All right, appreciate your feedback. Anyone else? Go ahead, Dennis.
Just to clarify, our June 1st meeting has been moved to June 8th, by the way. So we meet June 8th and June 22nd, just so you know.
Oh, so you changed both? You changed both dates?
Well, we never changed the second one. We were always going to meet June 22nd.
I thought it was the 29th. When I went out to the website on the calendar, it said June 1st and June 29th. I mean, I could have been wrong, but you're saying.
Well, I know we meet June 8th.
Okay. June 8th and June 22nd or the 29th.
Yeah.
I'm not sure we'll be ready by June 8th, to be honest with you. I'd prefer to do it later in the month, so I'll work with Matt on that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dennis. Carol, did I see your hand up?
You mean me? Krista Jamian? I don't see. Is there a Carol?
No, Carol Chafee.
Oh,
Okay, Carol Chafee, 650 Pleasant Street. I just wondered if you would just dive into the mid-year budget review again, and I'm wondering what the reasoning behind the council's why they didn't want it the last time around.
Yeah, I'm not sure that we actually know that. It was really I think it was the Rules and Procedures Committee that removed it. To me, it doesn't make any sense, Carol. I mean, we just felt like putting the town manager in a position where he or she has to, conduct a review midterm or mid-year to sort of reflect on the state of the budget. Some choose to do that, but there would be others maybe that wouldn't choose to do it. So we felt it was important to give sort of an update to the town on how things are going financially. So I'm not sure what else to say about it other than we feel it's important to have that in there.
Oh, and I feel it's important to be in there too. The only other comment I wanted to make, that we used to have a mayor in Bridgewater, used to be the mayor of Scotland.
Really?
Well, every year, Scotland Days, in the Scotland section of town, there would be an honorary mayor of Scotland.
Oh, so just one area of town though?
Yes, just one area. I had to
Okay.
throw
When
that
did
bit of history in there.
When did that stop, Carol?
Oh, we haven't had Scotland Days for probably 45 years,
I
but
see. Oh, that's an interesting tidbit. Thanks for sharing that. Anything else? Carol, anything else?
no, I'm all set. Thanks.
All right, thank you.
Thank
Appreciate
you,
the feedback.
committee. Thank you, everybody.
Yep, okay. Yes, Mrs. Ajamian.
Hi, yes, Chris Ajamian, 221 Aldrich Road. I also want to speak about the term limit for the town manager. I think 5 years is too long.
Okay.
I think at least no shorter than 3, of course. It gives everyone an opportunity to take a fresh look at how the relationship is working, any changes that need to be made. I think if we're unhappy with the town manager, 5 years is a long time to be unhappy. And then if you want to remove him or her from the office, it just involves a whole bunch of headaches. Whereas in 3 years, you get a good sense of how it's working and whether you want to continue or not. So that's my only comment about that. And again, my thanks too. I know what it's like to be involved in a committee that has a long, drawn out job, and I think you all deserve our thanks. You don't get enough public recognition sometimes.
Oh, thank you, Chris. I do want to ask you a question though. Do you feel the same way about the town attorney, the term?
Yes, I think that's probably, well, I don't think the town attorney is as critical a position on a day-to-day basis, although if the relationship is not working well, or you feel that you're not getting the right advice, you need to be able to take action.
Mhm.
And I do like that whole idea of staggering that Lauren had brought in. I think that makes it less critical. If all of a sudden you decide both of them have got to go, then you are in trouble. Yeah, I think the staggering idea is a good idea. And every 3 years, there's no harm in that. Yeah.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Carlton, I see you have your hand up again.
Yeah, 2 quick points. I absolutely agree with the mid-year formal budget presentation, actuals against budget. I'll give you a reason why. I'm a vice chair of the Community Preservation Committee. Under our ministerial responsibilities, we do have the right, as you know, we make an estimate of what the community preservation income will be. And we have to define where our budgeting would be placed. But the state DOR rules, and I'm not even sure if it's not the state law, says that the Community Preservation Committee can change their budget estimates midterm if revenues are far exceeding what we estimated. And what that does is it allows that budget to be changed, and it allows us to put more money, the 10%, into each of the 3 buckets that we have. And it increases our administrative account. So I think that's a concrete reason why we should have a mid-year review. And I had another thing, and my old brain has now forgotten what it is. It had to do with, I think that the fact that and I really super agree with the town councils. That's one comment I was going to make, that the town council will appoint the town attorney. I think that is a fantastic concept. I do believe the town attorney could be a 5-year term. And if you do that and you change the town manager to a 3-year, then you don't have that conflict.
Oh, good
But
point.
I think a town attorney needs continuity.
All right, great. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
This is awesome feedback. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Carol, again?
I'm just wondering, with this talk about 3 years for the town manager, whether 2 counselors are elected three counselors elected every year. So there's three counselors that have 3-year terms. And I'm just wondering if to have the overlap of the manager working with, have the review after maybe like 4 years, so that it overlaps maybe 3 new people or 3 of the same people. It just, I don't know if it's a significant difference or not, but it occurred to me that the review might, the review is done by the town council, then maybe it's, maybe it's insignificant. I've just thought about that. So
I'm not sure I'm following you. When you say the review, you mean the firing review?
So we're saying review the town manager's position at years is the current thing on the table. But the cross-section of the town council might change at that 3-year period also. And maybe that's insignificant.
Yeah, so we're talking really 2 branches of government here, right? We're talking the executive branch and we're talking the legislative branch.
So who does the review? Who would be, I'm sorry for my ignorance, but who does the review for the town manager then, or city manager?
So that's the legislative branch. The town council does that review. But I guess you're saying that there might be an issue with the counselors who are because they're on a 3-year staggered term. When it comes time to review the town manager, if it's a 3-year term for the town manager, you're saying that there might be some new people that come on board that wouldn't be able to give the right feedback, or I'm trying to understand what you're.
Yeah, I'm trying to, I just thought the cross-section would change at the 4-year mark rather than the 3-year mark. So that's all I was making the point at, is what the thought had come into my head when we were discussing it. That's all.
Okay, I understand what you're saying now. All right, thank you for that, Carol. Carlton?
Me again, sorry. Thanks for that question. I think that somehow, I know the town council is trying to review the manager. This last review, he's up for renewal at December. The town council has to notify the town manager as to whether or not they will renew the contract at least 3 months before that contract ends. If you go through that, you need to have the review set at a specific time. And I don't know if the charter should set it, but what I would say is the charter needs to set that it would be a 360-degree review. By that, I mean people that report to him, the council that he reports to, and the committees and department heads. And it all has to be an anonymous review. Last time it was done, there was some retribution based on the reviews. So I think we really need to define the review period when it should be done, the annual review and the contract review. And I think, because I think the town council has to be given more authority to manage the town manager. That's my point. So I'm going to leave it at that.
Yeah, so I'm obviously one of the things that we struggle with is the appropriateness of putting something in the charter versus having it in an ordinance type structure. And we've kind of resisted putting a lot of constraints or details around certain things in the charter. But we'll certainly take that back as for consideration, in whether or not we include it or not. But I agree with you. It needs to be tightened up a little bit.
What I would suggest that I agree with you. The charter should be it should be specific enough to manage the town. But I think that in your letter of recommendation, that you should submit that this was a major discussion in your letter, and that you were recommending as a committee, if you choose to do this, the committee recommends that the town council establish a more formal review policy in their rules and procedures. I think that keeps it out of the charter, which I agree it probably doesn't belong, but I think it needs, I think it's been very haphazard over the last 12 years. Sometimes it's done, sometimes it's done late, sometimes, well, it may be effective. And I think, again, publicly, I will say, I think it needs to be stretch goals that he needs to respond to. Otherwise, we can be faced with slowness. And I don't,
Yeah.
and this form of government is not intended to be that slow. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, and I just want to say that what you said applies to the town attorney as well.
Correct.
That he or she needs to be reviewed on the same kind of a structure that the town manager is reviewed on.
I concur.
Yeah. All right, anyone else? Okay, well, thank you so much, folks, for giving up your time on a beautiful Saturday morning to talk about the charter. This has been really, really exciting for me to get this feedback. And I think the committee, we're going to be meeting next Wednesday, and we're consolidating all the feedback that we've received. And then we're going to be diving right back in and making more changes. So this has been great. Thank you for your time and effort. And I guess we'll adjourn the call. Thank you very much. Have a good day. Enjoy the weekend.